Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to your latest episode of Wannabe Wednesdays. This is your usual co-host, Korean BBQ. Unfortunately, Woodshrew is once again ill and not disposed, not in condition, basically, to be with us again this week. So we wish Woodshrew a swift and speedy recovery so he can return to the show. But in his stead, I have two awesome guests with me this week. We have Roland from Defense of the Patients. Welcome, Roland.
Hello. We also have Jack from Defense of the Patients here too. But hey, thank you.
And we also have someone out of Defense of the Patients, Grouty. Welcome, Grouty.
Hello. Thanks for having me, guys.
Of course.
Good to have you. And the reason we have Grouty here, a major reason is, so for the last 2 weeks, you've probably been listening to me and Ursi and whoever else just ramble on and on about patch 6.86, but there's one crucial omission that we made in the patch, and that was we didn't talk about the new hero, Arc Warden. So this hero is not in Captain's mode, and he probably won't be there for a while based on the timetable they have. Well, actually, it depends, because I guess like Wyvern and some other heroes made swift transitions. But this is a hero that brought over from Dota 1 after Dota 2 came out, and just a really interesting hero. Seen it played a lot of different ways. But we're going to have Grouty here with us on the show to introduce basically this hero for us and talk about what he's seen, and and then we can start speculating and talking about his potential impact on the professional scene. And this is a very fresh new hero for me as well, so I mean I'll just be jumping into the speculation train. So yeah, Arc Warden.
Take it away, Grouty.
So I guess the first thing we should probably talk about are his 4 skills, since he's an interesting hero, and I think knowing what his skills do are very important to playing games against him, because most of my victories come from people just not knowing how he plays, which is often the case with new heroes. So his first skill is called Flux, and the description of it is that it infuses a lone enemy with swirling volatile energy, slowing its movement speed and dealing damage over time. The effect is inactive if another enemy unit is near the target. And it does 15, 30, 45, or 60 damage per second based on level. The movement slow is a constant 50%. It lasts for 6 seconds, and if there's ever an enemy within a radius of 225, they will stop taking the damage and stop being slowed. This is probably the strongest ability that the hero has in the early game, I think, and it's mostly due to the slow setting you up for follow-ups with one of his skills that we'll talk about later. And I guess before we go any farther, we should talk about his ultimate, right?
Yeah, I mean,
because
that's what makes him him.
Yeah, his ultimate is not one that you'll skip at level 6 ever. And it's called Tempest Double, and what it does is it creates a second hero that's just a copy of the main Arc Warden, and he can cast all of his skills and use all of his items, and when you split into your Tempest Double, all of your cooldowns are refreshed, except for a couple of items like Refresher Orb.
I think it's only Refresher Orb.
There might be one other one, and I know you can't use things like wards when you use Tempest Double.
Yeah, it's just not even in your inventory.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And what that does is it would let you cast 2 fluxes on somebody that when they're away from other units, and that's what gives him his early game potential, I think.
Absolutely.
So, after Flux, he has his W is called Magnetic Field, and this is kind of a frustrating ability as well for people that haven't played against him, because much like Wind Runner, I don't know what she's actually called anymore, it grants 100% evasion, but instead of just on the hero, it creates a targeted area on the ground and makes like a golden bubble around that area, and it lasts for 3.5, 4, 4.5, or 5 seconds. And it also grants bonus attack speed, 50, 60, 70, or 80.
Which is huge.
This is interesting for times in the game where you want to man-fight an Arc Warden, but if they have Tempest Double available, they have up to 10 seconds of 100% evasion, so you can't really just, like, try to punch him in his head, which makes him a frustrating hero to play against. After Magnetic Field, which I think this is a very important skill because it's his only defensive ability that he has, and it can be used to help save allies as well. So I've seen some people that would make builds where they would omit this, and I think that's just completely wrong.
That's me. That will omit Spark Wraith.
I didn't want to name names for him. But then there's Spark Wraith, which a lot of people have described like Techie's Minds, but I think it's a lot more than that. What Spark Wraith does is it summons a Spark Wraith that slowly materializes and patrols the targeted area until an enemy comes within its range. Once a target has been found, the Wraith fuses with them, dealing magic damage. Does 150 damage at level 1, which is a pretty strong nuke for level 1. And then 200, 250, 300. And I think what's the most important part of this skill personally is that it gives vision in its radius. So it has a 375 radius that grants you vision. I believe it's obstructed by trees, though.
It is,
not positive.
and it can be hidden. If you don't see the epicenter of it, you don't see any of it at all. Right. But it is visible to enemies, too, which should be noted.
Right, and it has a cast range of 2,000, which is one of the longest cast ranges I can think of in the game. Mm-hmm. So the downside of this ability is that it takes 3 seconds for it to activate. So it's sort of like Techie's Minds, where you can put a bunch of them down, and they'll all converge on an enemy at the same time. But you can see them, so they're not the same. And another key point is that it's a 4-second cooldown, so it's highly spammable, but your mana pool is pretty low in the early levels, so you can't just like cast 12 of them or anything, because it is 100 mana, which going back, Magnetic Field is 110 at all levels, and Flux is 75 at all levels. So those are his 3 main abilities, and then we've already sort of talked about Tempest Double because it creates a duplicate. The only thing that I wanted to point out is that the cooldown is 65 seconds, 60, and 55 based on level, and it costs you your current health and mana, 30%, 15%, and 0% based on 6, 11, and 16. And your duplicate always lasts for 20 seconds.
Yep. Which is, in my opinion, the hardest thing about playing Arc Warden well, is once you get your farm and everything like that, is getting your double somewhere and making sure that you can use maybe the 15 seconds because he has to teleport for 3 or 4 seconds, using him effectively for 15 seconds. Right. I mean, can you elaborate on that? Like, is it micro intensive, or is it just you have to pay attention? Is it map awareness? Because it doesn't feel that micro intensive, yet it's really hard to do in the moment.
I would agree with a lot of people that say this hero is somewhere in between like Meepo and, you know, maybe Invoker, in terms of like, you know, you have quick succession of keys you need to hit to do all of your combos and stuff like that. And it's sort of like Meepo, but it's not nearly as intensive. It could probably be more closely aligned with like a Lone Druid type of play, because you only have 2 heroes at any given time, but it's very important that you're using the correct buttons, the correct items on each one to make sure that you're ensuring your kills. A lot of the times you'll want to be casting like several Spark Wraiths when you split and things like that, since you can double up on the 4-second cooldown. And, you know, even if you have level 1 Spark Wraith when you're at level 6, you're still doing basically 300 damage when both of them are casting Spark Wraiths in the correct locations. The way that you get your Spark Wraiths to hit is by abusing the Flux 50% slow and placing the Spark Wraiths in retreat locations of your opponent. So what you would typically do is level up Flux, max it first because of the amount of damage it can do quickly, and then you would want to use Spark Wraiths to cut off an enemy's retreat in like a 1v1 situation, and then when they're forced to fight you, you use the Magnetic Field to give yourself evasion. So then they get into this position where they're just damned if they do, damned if they don't. And that's like, I think that that's the key to playing this hero in the early game, is to set up losing situations for your opponent, no matter what choices they can make. And if you can do that, you can be more effective using this hero than if you're just mindlessly throwing Flux at people and using your Magnetic Field as fast as you can all the time to just get in a little bit extra harass.
No, I mean, I absolutely agree. So, Grouty, so I've been calling myself Arc Roland because I've been playing so much Arc Warden. And Grouty, much the same, has been playing a lot of Arc Warden. And we finally did a 1v1 right before, a 1v1 mid, Arc Warden v Arc Warden, where I was talking a lot of shit, saying that, oh, you come at me, bro, I'm going to beat you, etc., etc. Where playing against him, I really realized his strength on this hero was that he does not leave you with any outs, which I thought was really, really interesting, and is not the way that I play Arc Warden. I play Arc Warden greedily. It's about gold for me, but for Grouty, the way he's playing Arc Warden is he's controlling space, which, I mean, that is, I think, where the techies comparison comes in, because techies was, in my opinion, the first hero that really was created that controlled a lot of space, right? Like, when the ags came out for techies in 684, I mean, it was pretty obvious that you don't go near that sign. You no longer place signs to fuck with people. That sign meant that I have an agonyms and that those mines are completely invisible no matter what happens, no matter what. And it controlled space. I feel like the way Grouty you play Arc Warden is that you hit somebody, you hit me with flux when I have no creeps near me or no allies near me. And that forces me to what? What do? I run toward my nearest tower, right? That's the logical move. But then you throw a Spark Wraith toward my nearest tower, which then I have to make a quick decision. Okay, now what the fuck do I do? Okay, I'm just going to man fight him. And then you run up and you try and fight him, and then just like he was saying, he throws down that magnetic field, giving him 100% evasion and improved attack speed. And you are literally, I was damned if I ran back to the tower. I'm damned if I fight him. I'm damned if I stand still. And it's a hero that I really do seeing. I could see him being used in pro play eventually, and be used really well in the right hands as far as controlling space and controlling movement. You can herd people. It's really cool. So Grouty, it was really cool, and I think that's what you focused on, and I will never skip Spark Wraith ever again. Because of that. I mean, if you're 50% slow, and that's actually really huge for 6 seconds, right? You are moving at half speed. Like Arc Warden starts out with 295. I'm now moving at 142.5 for 6 seconds, and then I see this Spark Wraith coming up, and I know it's going to do somewhere between 150 and 300 damage to me if I walk into it, and they're just going everywhere. Like, what do? It's a situation that is unlike many other heroes that don't really have the ability to control you. Maybe Magnus with like the right blink and the right skewer and RP. I don't know. It's just the way that he's able to force you into bad positions is quite interesting, in my opinion. But not how I play him. Like I said, I play him a much different way. So, I mean, it's all about getting the Midas up, right?
Yeah, and that's the number one thing about this hero is that every game you should start with a Midas as your first like core item, and where you go from that is, there's different lines of thought on what you can do, but it's definitely Midas first in 100% of games that you're playing him. If you want to play him as a support or a core, I think you should always just be forcing yourself to get a Midas as fast as you can. Similar, like if you're playing him as a support, which I haven't really tried much of yet, it'd be similar to AA, where you want to get a Midas early so that you can get your Aghanim Scepter without taking a lot of farm off of the map, and still just be, buying wards and stuff as that 5-position support.
Absolutely, yeah. And not to mention, for those of you that were wondering, does Tempest Double reset the Midas cooldown? Yes, it does.
Yes, it does.
So you were farming not only with your Midas on your main self, because he refers to him as the self, and on your second self, you're also Midasing once every 65, 60, 55 seconds. So it's ridiculous. Or is it 60, 55, 50?
It is 65, 60, 55.
Oh yeah. Okay. So your ability to farm is insane.
At level 16, you basically get 3 Midases in 1 Midas cooldown.
Yes, which is, something that I remember there was for a while there. Jack, you're gonna probably have to correct me, but wasn't there something with Lone Druid where Lone Druid could build a Midas both on his bear and on Scylla, and double Midas? Did that ever exist?
I've seen that for a while. I believe you've been able to do that for a while. I don't think that's...
I think you still can.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I think what happened was they had to add like a mana pool or something to the bear or something like that so that you could use the Midas.
Oh, okay.
I've been seeing that for... I recall seeing that like years ago, so I think that's been a thing for a while.
Yeah, which, at first you look at it and you're like, that's gimmicky as fuck. But with Arc Warden, it's not. It's, sure, maybe call Arc Warden a gimmicky hero, but that item is absolutely core. That's how he farms. A thing that you didn't mention, Grouty, is his base damage.
Right, I was going to get to his weaknesses in a little bit, but...
Oh, okay. Sorry,
that is definitely one
of
the things that... is poor with Arc Warden is his base damage is very low. It's comparable to Invokers without any points in Quas or Exhort.
Yeah.
At level 1, I think it's like 2 higher than Invokers base damage without any items, but that's still really, really low. And I guess this is a good time to transition into what I think are his weaknesses as a hero. He's an agility hero with very low agility gain. It's actually his lowest stat gain. He starts with 15 agility, 24 strength, and 24 int. So that's a little unusual, I feel like, for most heroes in the game to have the lowest gain and the lowest starting value of their main stats. So he's got very low base damage. But I think that this is kind of how you balance him, because if he had good base damage and good stat gains, then when you split into two, you just crush everybody, because it's like you have two full heroes.
At first, I thought it was such. I went into the demo mode. The second 6.86 came up, and it was like front screen. It's like demo the hero now.
Yeah.
And I demoed him, and I'm like, this guy is impossible to last hit with. Like
Yes.
I cannot get last hits with him, and that plays into him being balanced, in my opinion, or somewhere near balanced. I still think he's overpowered, personally. And I mean, the stats don't show that, but I mean, some things that you're able to do, how quickly you're able to farm.
I feel like he has very interesting strengths that can be abused for sure, but I wouldn't say that he's an overpowered hero necessarily. I think looking at the Midas thing, it seems a little strong to me at first glance, and even playing the games where I can have more a low KDA where I've been getting ganked a lot and still have 600 plus GPM and end up winning the game, even though I'm not contributing a ton to team fights and things like that. But I feel like if they took away the Midas, he probably would just be a completely unpickable hero. So it might be better that he has something that's too good than not being able to be played at all.
Being unplayable. And I mean, go ahead.
The drawback to that, or the fix for that I was thinking maybe, is that the Midas's share cooldown with the self and the other self.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe whatever your Midas cooldown is, it stays the same when you split. And that might fix it to make it a little more balanced, but I think even how he is, it's probably okay.
Yeah, I would agree, but I mean, I don't even think Midas is the biggest abuse of this hero. I think it has to be the Necro book.
The Necronomicon is very good as well.
That is the thing that I think should have shared cooldowns, is the Necro book, not the Midas. Because the Midas, he needs that, right? Like, you were talking before we were recording about how am I 3 levels below this guy when I've killed him 6 times? And your Tempest Double does not give you experience on the Midas. So you don't share experience with your Tempest Double. Your Tempest Double actually receives the experience, but he goes away in 20 seconds, so it doesn't matter.
Right. And I think that bug has actually been fixed, or at least made a little better for Arc Warden, but there was a problem in the first week or two where I would just be severely underleveled regardless of my performance in the game, and it was just puzzling to me that somebody that I killed 4 times and had 0 deaths in the game was 2 or 3 levels over me when we were 1v1 mid or something like that, and it just seemed a little off. And I think that in the most recent patch they fixed almost all of those problems that people were experiencing, where the Tempest Double was just leeching experience out of the map and not giving it to anyone. So it was similar to the Meepo problems that they have when you're 5-manning with a Meepo and he's getting most of the experience of the team. But in this case, instead of all of the experience that was being earned by the team being distributed differently, it's just you were missing, if you were 5-manning with your Tempest Double out, 1/6 of the experience that your team was earning was just disappearing off of the map. And I think that they fixed that since.
It does feel like it's been fixed. I think it was a 6.86 thing. Or 6.866. Yeah, C. Thank you.
C, yeah.
Which, I mean, there are some notable things to go over on 6.86C, but we'll leave that for a later time. Real quick, I want to get into different trains of thought on Arc Warden, because you and I definitely differ a lot in itemization is kind of the biggest thing with Arc Warden. Would you agree with me there, Grouty?
Yeah, there's a few very different
schools of thought. Yeah,
there's different schools of thought for how you should play this hero and what you should do with him.
The skill
build, the items you choose.
Yeah, the skill build. What I was gonna say is the skill build doesn't it matters. Yes, it matters if I was on the stats train for a long time and it did severely hurt me, or not leveling Spark Wraith, that really hurts you, or foregoing Flux can really hurt you. But I think what makes Arc Warden is the items you put on him, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, that's the point I'm getting at. And the school of thought with you is you play a safe Arc Warden. Will you let us know how you generally will start and finish a game as Arc Warden?
So in most games, I like to start with, it depends on which lane I'm going into, which we can talk about that in a little while. later. But my first core item, like I said, was Midas, and then my second core item is almost always Necronomicon, and I'll try to level that to 3 as fast as possible. And after that, I like to start split pushing. So some games I'll build into like a meta style and just make like a little army. And I like to make the jokes in games like, all right, now I'm playing StarCraft and everybody else is playing Dota. And, that it's kind of tilting for the other team. But
it is.
He's a really strong rat, and I would argue that he might even be the best rat in the game, based on the fact that you can, split yourself from your well, use Boots of Travel to get to a lane, drop a Necro 3, Midas a Catapult, use your Manta, and just push like 3 waves in.
Or better yet, upgraded Boots of Travel. Oh shit, there's a fight. I don't even have to go into that fight. I Tempest double onto my Pudge, throw a fucking magnetic field over me and the Pudge, and all of a sudden we won the fight and took the racks when we were going to lose? What? Like that has been the most rewarding experience that I've had with Arc Warden. Because, where our schools of thought differ is you're generally nice to the people you play with, so you don't buy a Divine Rapier for fear of losing it and giving it to the other team, where I am all about fucking Midas into Boots of Travel, into Necro 3, into as many Divine Rapiers as I can hold, and I leave basically my main Arc Warden in Fountain while sending the double on top of people and just trying to push racks or kill people in that 15 seconds of time that you have that Tempest double. Where you play a much more, I'm willing to fight with my main Arc Warden.
Yeah, I do like to get involved more because my general follow-up to the Manta, or sometimes I'll even go before the Manta, I'll get a Hex. Oh. And having 2 Hexes makes Arc Warden a viable team fighting hero, which is something that a lot of people think he can't do. But, either having a double duration on a single target or hexing 2 high priority targets at the same time is like something huge that most heroes don't have that kind of crowd control. No. So if you can take out like a carry and like a support, or like grab like an Omni Knight for 7 seconds of sheep and stop him from getting his ultimate off, just things like that. And I find that Sheepstick is very rewarding item to build on him, just because it allows you to be involved in your fights still. Whereas if you go full on with the split push build, you just kind of avoid everything. And I find it's somewhat like Naga Siren. Like if she gets her Radiance at a decent time, she's just going to choke you out. But if she doesn't, what are you going to do? So I like to have that contingency plan of having a Scythe, or just any items that can just help my team win fights.
Which is selfless of you, because I'll be honest, I'm playing at a 2K level, and I just want my team to survive long enough for me to get my first Divine Rapier, and then I get a Mask of Madness, and then I turn into the ugliest of ugly rats, where I literally, the lane is just slowly inching forward and forward and forward until I'm on top of their tier 3, throwing a magnetic field. Even though here's something that people still like, I think even casters think this: magnetic field does not stop other towers. It does not give you evasion from enemy towers, which is something that should be noted, right? It will give evasion to your own towers, as in your towers will be 100% evasive. But when you're attacking with Arc Warden and you throw magnetic field over an enemy tower, it is still going to hit you and do full damage. Which is a lesser known thing, and I see a lot of Arc Wardens just like throwing it on top. But you still do that when you're splitting with your Tempest double, because you don't want the heroes killing your Tempest double, right? You want to stay there to get maybe 4 or 5 hits with a Divine Rapier, which means half of a tier 3, and guess what? I just used him for 20 seconds. I had a 55-second cooldown. Here in 35 seconds, I have another one that's going to be up there hitting it again, while my main Arc Warden is never going to lose that Divine Rapier because the Fountain has become my home. I set up a cot, me and the shopkeeper, go back and forth on the latest gossip, while my Tempest double is out doing all the work. It's kind of how I'd like to live my life. A clone of me goes out and does all the horrible obligations, while I can stay at home, doing what I want to do. You know what I mean? It's that's why I think I love the hero so much. So
Clone Roland, go record the show.
yeah, Clone Roland's gonna record tonight while I'm out at the strip club. Ooh.
Who's to say this is the real Roland right now?
Yeah.
Is this Bizarro Roland?
I haven't disappeared in 20 seconds. That's the thing.
That's a good point.
Or maybe I have an Octarine core and I'm timing it right when I'm saying things, right? You know, like the cooldown's only 40 seconds. I say something for 15 seconds, wait 40 seconds, say something. You know,
and the split push build, that is another item that I usually will make, actually, is an Octarine core to lower the cooldowns, which is more for the Tempest double and the Midas than anything else, really. But it also helps with the Manta style if you're going for that split push build.
Yeah. Jack, you've heard us go back and forth a little bit on this hero. You mentioned before recording you've played 30 some odd games in 686. Is that correct?
No.
Oh.
I've played 30 total games, but not with this hero.
Yeah, and you've never seen Arc Warden, is what you were saying.
I still haven't seen it except on video and in highlight, but there's a couple things that you guys mentioned that are really interesting. First of all, Grouty mentioned like the body for this hero. It is truly unique because for the most part, heroes have like good growth in their main stat or something, but this hero is an agility hero, but its main stat is by far the worst and weakest of all of its stats, so that's interesting. Obviously, it's like a different mechanic at work there. And then also, you're starting to see a lot of these kind of new heroes. Like, I do like things that are relatively high skill cap. I think that's a good addition to Dota. You don't want too many of these
Vipers?
like a potato-y type hero.
Viper.
Viper?
Yeah,
Viper the potato?
Or, even something like Necro or like Wraith King or something.
Yeah.
And
Wraith King has two buttons now, Jack.
Yeah, he does have two buttons. He can turn his lifesteal off.
Oh, my mistake. He now has two activatables, not one.
Did you see that Reddit picture where it's like Wraith King and it just showed the whole keyboard, but it was just the Q button? It was a keyboard with just Q. Oh, anyway, sorry. I digress. Go on.
So that's interesting. Like, the high skill cap, I like. I mean, I think we would all be really excited to watch this hero be played in, like, a competitive setting or, like, a real game. But also, it's also weird because this hero feels like it gives us, you mentioned techies. It's similar in that it feels like it violates like the rules of Dota. It just feels like a hero from outside of the game.
Yeah.
Like I remember I asked CDEC about what they thought about techies and stuff. This was at ESL 1 New York, and they were like, yeah, when we scrimmed at TI against EG, they played it like frequently, and then they described it as like just like losing, just like not having a lane anymore, like just having one lane disappear, because it's like you can't go down there. There's no incentive to try to kill him. You could only go south, or like you just waste your time, and it's just not Dota anymore. So this hero feels like it could potentially have that impact because unlike with like a hero like Naga, you mentioned those kind of like choky heroes, the build-up doesn't seem. The build-up seems more inevitable, and it seems much quicker just because of that Midas. Like, has there been a hero where an item is as required on them as Midas is on this hero, and as like almost hero enabling? It, just from what you guys are talking about, it doesn't really sound like there's any other hero I can think of where like that item is just like so completely integral.
I think you're right.
Yeah, it's made Midas a core item for a hero. I mean, Midas, like, of course, when I first started playing, I saw a Purge plays where he got Midas first on Nature's Prophet. And so I played 50 games of Nature's Prophet where I would get 10-minute Midases because the creeps would kill me because I didn't know how to micro my trees. And yes, it felt core on Nature's Prophet that I got a Midas. But only for the reason that I thought it would make me rich, not doing the math on the cooldowns and making sure that I'm hitting the right creeps. And I would always Midas big creeps when I didn't necessarily need experience. I needed gold more, so you should use the smaller creeps. And anyway, it is really cool to finally say, hey, Midas is now a required item for this hero. As required as a Basher is for Anti-Mage, maybe better yet, a Manta for Anti-Mage. Like, you wouldn't play an Anti-Mage without a Manta style, right?
I've played more Anti-Mage games without Manta style than I've played Arc Warden games without Midas, though.
Yeah, sure. Like, it is absolutely 100% core, and some of my more frustrating games recently have been with people who pick Arc Warden because it's new and they think they're badass, because everybody's badass at 2K. Everybody is the best and knows everything.
Everybody's badass at every bracket.
Yeah. And so they pick Arc Warden and they're going mid because they've seen Arc Warden mid before. and they're doing all right. You know, they're using his abilities, as in they're just like mindlessly mashing them. You know what I mean, and throwing them on heroes. And then their first item is like something ridiculous, like I don't know, like a desolator, and it's like no, like we're at 30 minutes. You have a desolator. Where's your Midas? Like you have to have a Midas, and he's like, dude, you don't even make your money back on a Midas in a quick game, and it's like. That's true, with the exception of Arc Warden.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it only takes like 7 minutes to pay for itself instead of like the 15 that it normally would.
Yeah, I think it's they were assuming. So I saw this graph. It's assuming Arc Warden started with Tempest Double and a Midas at 0 minutes. Okay, 7 minutes in, the Midas has paid for itself if you're using it 100% efficiently. Whereas on a normal hero, it's 18 minutes. So there is a 12-minute difference on paying the Midas back. At the 18-minute mark, with the you know, in a vacuum, assuming that Arc Warden at 0 minutes has level 6 and Midas, at 18 minutes should be able to accomplish just with Midas a Necro 3 and pay for the Midas back. So I mean, it's pretty obvious that OS Frog. I don't get the OS. Is that like operating system Frog? Is that what that means?
It's a Twitch emote.
Oh, okay. So
it's the frog face on Twitch.
Oh, okay. So OS Frog, obviously is saying build a Midas on this hero, absolutely, without a doubt. And when I see people not build Midas on Arc Warden, it literally makes my Grinchy heart, you know, 3 sizes smaller because and I try and like just lay on the encouragement at the first, where it's like, okay, I don't even care that it's 30 minutes in. I think you should build Midas. Like I think it's definitely going to help you get to another item, because right now you have a Desolator and you have 14 deaths. And it's cool that you have a Deso, but you have 14 deaths and you have a shitty Agi gain and you're still not doing anything. Yeah, it's weird. Whereas like a Nature's Prophet, you know, you just kind of sigh when you see that they have like a Glove of Haste and it's 9 minutes in. And they have like 900 gold and a Glove of Haste, and you're like, oh god. But whereas Arc Warden, if it's 9 minutes in and they all they have is a Glove of Haste and 900 gold, I'm like, all right, well, you know, he's 600 gold away from his Midas, everything will be all right. We just need to create some space. Like that's the difference. Where it's like he can get a Midas literally anywhere from 0 to 20 minutes, and it's going to pay off huge. Which I like a lot about him, where it's not like, wow, Alchemist got a 4-minute Midas, that's so incredible. Well, Alchemist got a 3-minute Midas, fastest ever. Like, it doesn't matter with Arc Warden. He just needs to get a Midas. That's my general sentiment on him. That's why I like to take him off lane, is that even if I have 9 last hits or 12 last hits and it's 11 minutes in, I'm finishing my Midas. You know what I mean? Like, I pretty much have it, so long as I haven't died, just from passive gold. You know what I mean? So I don't know.
I think that's a good point to transition into where this hero should get laned. And I have some opinions on that, which I don't know if they're facts. They should be facts or not. But
I have stats, so we'll hear.
Yeah, we have some stats for like what the presents are based on Dota buff. Mm-hmm. And safe lane is the most common. Mid lane is second most, and off lane is the least common. And the win rates are all right around 38%, 37, 38% for all three of them. So where he goes doesn't really determine as much how successful he is. In my personal opinion, I've preferred solo offlaning him, which doesn't, at first glance, doesn't make a lot of sense because he doesn't have any true escapes. So he's kind of, you know, being relegated to the suicide offlane like days have passed, you know, where it's just try to get as much XP as you can. But I think that's what's important, Arc Warden, is early game. You want levels more than you want gold because his skills scale so well in the early game. Mm-hmm. And I feel like if you're playing against 2 dual lanes, he is very, very strong in the off lane because more times than not, the off lane support will try to zone you, and they'll put themselves into positions where they're not close to a creep wave. So if you have a level advantage on a support player, like say like a Jakiro or something, which is something that's happened to me a couple of times, people want to zone me because of that 7 base damage buff, which is kind of annoying. But then if I'm level 5 and he's level 3, I zap him once with Flux, I right-click him 3 times, and I put down a Spark Wraith, and he's dead, and there's no way for him to live through that. So it's almost like people will just give you free gold by playing aggressively against you. The only times that I think that he's bad in the offlane are as if you have heroes that can alter the terrain, like, say, a Tusk or an Earthshaker, because his only escape is literally run away. Like,
yeah,
put down your bubble to try to evade and TP out if they don't have a stun in the lane, or run away, and he's not fast. So
No.
if you're playing against a hero that can cut off your retreat, he's not good in the off lane, I think. And that's when I would want to play him in the mid lane. Playing in the safe lane, I don't like it because you're trying to secure farm for him, and his base damage is really bad, so it's kind of difficult to last hit with him. So if you have like an aggressive dual lane being paired against you in the opponent's off lane, I don't think you're going to be able to secure any farm for yourself. So you're not getting levels and you're not getting any gold. So you're kind of just dawdling around in that lane and not accomplishing much. However, he does have some kill potential, maybe paired with some heroes, but like another hero with a slow or something, or a strong nuke, like maybe, I don't know, Disruptor, something like that. Another hero that's a good counter.
I have a theory for why his safe lane is his highest presence. And that is because, like all of us scrubs do, we run to YouTube when there's something that confuses us about Dota, and usually the first thing to pop up is a Purge plays, okay? And the first Purge plays, I mean, Purge was really quick about getting an Arc Warden video out, and he was very definitive in saying that this is the safe lane carry, and I will go safe lane, and I will be supported, and I will safe lane carry. And
I think that's the first time I've ever disagreed with something Purge has said.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's early on. Purge may not know it, and you know what? He did well in that game, and that game was actually a really impressive game to watch. And especially it was a replay commentary, so it wasn't him like playing the game and talking, where he can get a little absent. He was actually, very, on top of it, explaining his skills, explaining what he does, and he was just basically saying, this is a safe lane carry. He goes late game. Here's the items that you want, and everything else he was absolutely right on. Purge is a very skilled player. He was able to last hit pretty well, even with that low base damage. Whereas for the rest of us, when I'm hitting at like 49 or maybe like 54 if I have a Wraith Band, if I'm playing against passive bots, okay, that don't even do anything, all they do is walk around in circles, I'm still getting maybe 1 or 2 of 4, of the creeps, just because it's hard, man. Like, that's all I have to say about it. It's hard. It's like Shadow Fiend before any souls, you know what I mean? That's why they send a support mid with Shadow Fiend, to get him 4 or 5 souls, and then they leave, because he needs just a little bit more damage to last hit.
The one exception I would say to my comment about the safe lane, though, is if you are running like a defensive safe lane tri-lane, he's probably pretty safe in that lane to just farm.
Well, and Spark Wraiths, and I think Purge brought up a good point with Spark Wraiths in this Purge plays, was that you should never be able to you should never be ganked. Like, you should always have a Spark Wraith. You have a 2,000 range to cast it, right? You're in the safe lane.
Yeah, you have a 100 mana ward every 4 seconds.
Yeah,
and
he's
you 250 vision, or 275.
And he used it excellently too. Like, Purge wasn't using it the way you use it, Grouty, although you use it to scout as well. Like, I'm just going off of this 1v1 mid that I just had with you. Purge was using it.
When I'm in the off lane, I'll almost always put it in the section of, say the dire off lane, the section of trees where you can see like the 3-way path where a ward would normally get put, so that there's actually no way that they can run at me without me seeing them first.
Yeah.
And I'll almost always try to leave a Spark Wraith right there. So it's just like a free ward that they can't counter ward without walking into, which gives me the information that I wanted anyways.
Which, in a weird way, can make your safe lane stronger if you send Arc Warden off lane, because he can ward for himself.
Right.
And then you can take those 2 wards, and off
You
lane
can have
no
a lane
longer
ward.
needs a ward.
Yep.
Yeah.
For your safe lane.
Yeah, and maybe you can. And now that finally the Radiant jungle has been fixed, in my opinion, where the Dire jungle has always required 2 wards, right, in order to get a good grasp of information on the Dire jungle, whereas the Radiant jungle, you could live with 1 for your safe lane. I love that now the Radiant jungle requires 2 in order to cover all your paths. I mean, Jack, is this something you agree with me on? This is just kind of a fleeting thought that I had recently, was like that the Radiant jungle being changed around the way it was brilliant, because now it's more fair with the Dire jungle, because the Dire jungle felt way more gankable.
Yeah, it's well, I mean, part of the reason they changed is because of the ease of vision as well that Dire had, so it was just like very difficult. This was just very easy for Dire to invade. So yeah, this makes it more difficult. You have more entryways. There's more like juke spots and such, and So yeah, it does balance things out a little bit, but yeah, I do like that change. But going back to the star of the show, the Arc Warden here, I just I'm really curious to hear what more you guys have to say about that and from the Purge thing as well, because um, I mean, this is, I don't know, this hero, like, just based on what I've heard you guys say alone and what I've seen, it's it's a type of hero that feels like it can play a very solo-ish type of game where you're doing things that have like no real definitive answers, like both in the sending the double to Rat or using the Spark Wraith as vision. There's no like real counterplay for it, and that's something that I'm beginning to form an impression as something that I kind of dislike. So
Yeah, a lot of games that I've been playing, like in solo queue especially, I'll just completely ignore my team and just play my game, and I think it's the right thing to do. Which I'm not. I don't think that is good. Like that, completely ignoring your team is the correct thing to do, because I don't find that happens often, where you both ignore them and it's correct to do that. But you're definitely right that this hero can kind of just go off on his own and make sure that he's not dying and is getting some kind of farm. And then once you have your Midas, you can kind of take off. Like, I would just go to the new hard camp on the off lane and Midas a creep every time my Midas is off a cooldown, or if my double's off cooldown, I'll grab both of them at the same time.
Yeah.
He is very fragile, though, which is something that we've kind of brought up. Like, I didn't mention it earlier, but he does have 0 starting armor. It's like negative 0.1 or something, or negative 0.2. So you need items to have armor.
Right. So even though his abilities, the Flux is one of those abilities that seems to punish you for being separated in the same way that, say, like an Omni Slash or maybe Gyro's Rocket Barrage or Lesh
exactly the same
does. But it seems like, based on his stats and the way he's played, he's seldom active in that way where he's like there using these abilities to help you fight. These are kind of things that are very potent with his double, or like just something that make his double useful for reasons other than right clicking. So I don't know. I kind of don't like the lack of a better word. There's like reclusiveness to this hero, and
right.
I don't.
His abilities are well, 2 of them are actively bad in a team fight situation. Like Spark Wraith will always hit whatever's closest to the center when it goes off, and Flux doesn't work if you have an ally around you. So you almost don't want to fight with your team because of those 2 abilities. But then Magnetic Field is an AoE, so you can help your whole team, but it forces them to group up. So if you're playing against like a Magnus or an Earthshaker, any kind of magic damage AoE, you don't want to group up. So he is kind of like this. There's a dichotomy of playing him that's kind of strange, and I think the reason his win rate is so low is that people both don't know how to play with or against him. And I found that in my party games, I win with a higher percentage than I do in my solo games, because I could explain the strategy of how I'm going to play the game to them, and they'll work around that. And when he can play to his strengths, I think he's a strong hero. But when he can't, I think he's a very bad hero.
Oh, I definitely agree. All my experience with playing Arc Warden, with the exception of 2 games, has been solo queue. I've played 17 games of Arc Warden, 32% win rate or something like that. But the way that I found playing Arc Warden that worked the best for me was a roaming Arc Warden with Flux level 1 paired with Ancient Apparition. And I played him as a support. I bought support items, and guess what? I got a Midas by like 13 or 14 minutes.
That sounds incredibly strong, actually.
And we just roamed around whatever lane needed it. And guess what? He would cold feet. And guess what people do when they're getting cold feeted? They run away, right? And they isolate themselves. And then you hit them with the Flux, 50% slow. You guarantee if done right, you pretty much guarantee that the cold feet freezes while they're taking 6 seconds of damage. Basically, once you hit level 6, they're taking 720 damage from Flux at a 50% slow speed, not to mention Chilling Touch, Ice Vortex, and Cold Feet. It was an incredible combo, and I didn't even take that much farm off the map, because I would just double and then go invade their jungle and double Midas in their jungle, and it was fine. And then I was able to get big support items that, like, I think I got a Vlad's and an AC, where it was like, okay, yeah, you don't need to get an AC. I'll get that because I can afford that. And I was present in every team fight, and I used Spark Wraiths as more of a what's up the hill, opposed to trying to kill people. And I made sure when I spawned my double that I was not stacking my magnetic fields, but making sure that they were, in succession. When one would end, another would start. And we wrecked. I think we won in 19 or 20 or 20. It was a really quick win, and I was able to have the same GPM as the carry in a position where I wasn't even in a lane. And I think that is something about Arc Warden that is, you need high coordination on that, because people look at Arc Warden and they say, hey, that guy needs a lot of farm, so send him solo off lane or send him mid because he needs a lot of farm. No, he needs to get a Midas, but it doesn't really matter when you get that Midas so long as your team's doing well. Because once I get that Midas, I'm getting an insane amount of gold really, really quickly. And my double can start throwing out Spark Wraiths to kill neutral camps. Me and AA can take down stacks pretty easily with spamming Spark Wraiths and then making sure you use Flux when there's a lone creep. There's just a lot of versatility to the hero. I think he is one of the only heroes in the game that can be played in every position, from a 5 to a 1. Which I think is really, really interesting about him. I think he will never stay as a 5, because he'll always transition, and his farm priority doesn't go up. It's just he gets farm.
Right.
It's just wherever you want to start him, he's gonna get farmed. It's kind of like I don't know, Spectres that I've been playing against recently, where I killed the Spectre 7 times in the early game, but by 50 minutes, if the game goes 50 minutes, that Spectre has everything she needs, and we lose. It's just a matter of time with Arc Warden, just like Spectre is kind of a matter of time hero, similar to some other really hardcore late game carries. So I love the hero, and that's my general thought on it, is that I was gonna spam him big time, but I've been playing a lot of solo ranked, and it doesn't work so well because coordination is what is the most frustrating thing about solo queue, which we can all, I'm sure, attest to that.
I agree.
So, Grouty, thank you for all your insight into Arc Warden. It's been fun, streaming Arc Warden and having you flame me for not getting Spark Wraith. It's been fun 1v1 midding you as Arc Warden and seeing just how powerful of a mid you can be. It's been fun telling my buddies that play mid, hey, get on learning this hero right now, because this is something you may want to pull out when it gets added to Captain's Mode, and you see, I don't really know definitive heroes that you really wreck. I think, Sniper, I think ranged mids are mids that you generally wreck because they're not standing near creeps, like Snipers and Wind Rangers, and nobody understands how Flux works, like you were saying, so they're really easy targets. Anyway, it's a fun hero to play, and I appreciate the insight.
There's a couple more things that I wanted to bring up real quick.
Yeah,
if that's
please.
Okay.
Oh, absolutely.
As far as him being a mid hero goes and what matchups he's good in, I think he's pretty strong in any matchups where the opposing mid requires runes, because this hero owns runes harder than pretty much any other hero in the game. Because you have to run away from creeps. So unless you're rotating a support to secure your rune every 2 minutes, you're just gonna die if you try to go get the runes in the first 8 minutes of the game.
Good point.
You won't get to a rune, get it, and live ever. You 100% you will die to Arc Warden if you both run after the same rune. And maybe Viper is the only thing I can think of that might not die, just because of how tanky he can be with Corrosive Skin early if you max that first. But pretty much anything else, I played against Invoker a million times this patch already. It feels like pretty much every game I've gone Arc Warden mid, and I just kill him. Which doesn't make sense because Invoker shouldn't be going for runes anyways. But every time they do, I just flux them, put down one Spark Wraith, and right-click them twice, and they're dead. And it's pretty.
It's vicious.
It's pretty interesting that a hero can dominate the runes that hard.
And
similar to TA after she's level 6. You don't really want to go for the runes because if you get trapped, you're probably dead.
He can Spark Wraith the runes, too, from sitting in by his tower.
Right.
He can say, are you going for top rune? Let me throw a Spark Wraith from 2,000 range. Let me see if you are going for top rune. Oh, no, you're going for bottom rune.
You can place your Spark Wraiths in such a way that they're like slightly within the radius, and then they have to decide, well, I'm close to the rune, should I try and grab it, or do I need to run away?
Yeah.
And just like I was saying before, where you set up these situations where it's a lose-lose situation for them. Another important part of playing the hero that I missed completely earlier is that your double can use all the consumables that you have on your main version of the hero. So when I offlane, I like to start with a mango, and when I mid, I don't. But every time I split, I have the opportunity to have 300 extra mana at any given point when I'm split.
He can feed you the mango.
Right, and I always feed myself the mango from the double. Right, because the double can just use the mango on the main guy, give him 150 mana every time you split. So it's a big power play in those situations. Where
And the 1 HP regen.
You cannot fairy fire. You can't use that on friends.
Oh, but I'm saying, no, but the 1 HP regen that mango grants. The HP regen.
Well, you're always getting that.
Yeah, that's insane, because you never want to use the mango on your main Zet.
Exactly.
That's interesting. It didn't even cross my mind.
One of the reasons that I go mango in the off lane is just it's like free mana. Bottle's an item that I don't have a strong opinion on either way right now. I think it's good in the mid lane because you dominate the runes, so you might as well be picking them up. And it could be okay in the off lane. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure. I haven't tried it in off lane at all yet. But it takes up a slot and it lives on your Midas, so I would probably not do it in the off lane or safe lane ever. But I don't want to say ever. I would very rarely consider it.
Sure. Wow.
And if you have a rune or a full bottle when you split, you can use the bottle from your double on your main as well. So those are the
anybody
big,
else.
Tips, I guess.
The mango tip is a really good one. Because mango, my problem is I don't like the idea of eating net worth. You know what I mean? Although, like at the start, yes, I buy a salve, and yes, I buy tangos and whatnot. Yes, I buy clarities, and I'm eating that net worth. But a mango is just like, it's so big, it's just a sudden burst. Like, I only need it, for that very precarious moment, when I'm playing Sven and I need that stun to get away, and that's why I'm carrying this mango. But if you can just keep using the mango every 65 seconds or 50 or 60 seconds or 55 seconds, why not have mango just be a permanent slot for a little while?
Yeah, it's a strong item to just carry around for the regen.
That's wow.
I guess, Jack, did you have any other high-level questions or anything that you were curious about, or playstyle type things?
No, not really. I mean, you brought up some fascinating things. There is some versatility. Again, I just like just naturally, I kind of just like the things that don't seem to have much interaction. Like the fact that you can cast something from so far away doesn't feel like Dota. The risk-free kind of illusion, which there are illusion-based heroes, but like the kind of inevitability of that, just seems really annoying. Although I am seeing on the wiki that the track still grants it gold for when the double dies.
Oh,
so,
I did not know that.
And I don't think that's going to get changed. I'm pretty sure that's going to remain in the game. So bounty could be considered a good strong counter. Because for most abilities in the game, he's supposed to be considered as a hero, quote unquote.
Yeah, but he doesn't drop the Divine Rapier. Is the only thing.
Yeah, he doesn't drop the Rapier. Dual damage doesn't work either, but the track does work. So.
Wow.
Right.
Okay, so yeah, get a bounty hunter against Arc Warden and just make sure you kill his double over and over and over. Because I don't care about my double if it gets killed or it expires. The thing is, you've got to kill it really quickly with bounty.
If I'm not mistaken, I think even if it expires, you get the track gold, right?
That would be crazy. Because then you're just feeding them.
It says it checks for target death, so
okay,
I think. But then but can you track illusions that expire though? I don't know of that being a thing.
You don't get gold off of illusion deaths, so I don't know.
I think you do have to kill it. I think you do have to kill it.
So you have to kill it in a very small time frame, but it's easy to kill. It's
not difficult to kill them. Mm-hmm. Especially early on where you're sacrificing 30% of your current HP. You're like nuking yourself for them.
Sure. It's true. There's a lot of... just talking about this hero is kind of exhausting. Just because it's like, wow. Like, it does not... You're absolutely right. It feels like it does break, like, the Dota code. Where it's like, this isn't Dota. Like, you're supposed to be anti-mage and getting last hits and you blink away from things. Like, that's Dota. Or, like, an arrow hit you from Mirana. Like, that's Dota. Not like Spark Wraiths from 2,000 range away or triple Divine Rapier illusions that do the same amount of damage with a Mask of Madness and then just disappear? Like, what? Is that fair? And by the way, he has a 70% win rate with Divine Rapier.
Well, is this the only hero in the game whose illusions can use Rapier? Because I'm under the impression that that is the case.
Yeah.
Yes.
The only
Since
one.
it's counted as a hero, any plus damage items work, as opposed to only base stats working on illusions. So Divine Rapier is just much, much better than like Butterfly on this hero for pure damage.
Yeah, and getting 2 or 3 of them is not that hard once you have a Necro 3.
However, if you have a Manta style and a Divine Rapier, the illusions from the Manta style won't get the plus damage, so he's totally balanced.
I was like, yeah, he is. And Manta style, he actually has a pretty high win rate too, at 4%. But it's pretty definitive that the Divine Rapier. But that's just if you can get there, you're probably going to win. You know, where Manta's much easier to get to than holding the Divine Rapier, and yeah, and that's a game that ends with you having a Divine Rapier in your inventory. Makes sense that it's going to be 72%. But, I mean, God, I think that's been an hour of Arc Warden, and I think there are going to be some changes. First and foremost, Spark Wraith is going to get nerfed. I think that there was one thing that you failed to mention on Flux, is that as it levels up, it gets 100 range every time it levels up, so you can Flux somebody from 900 range. So you can double Flux from 900 range when maxed. Which is crazy. I think that should just be a set range instead of 900, because that's also a humongous cast range. I don't know. The hero seems, I mean, just talking about him, I don't know about you guys, but seems a little broke. Seems a little broke. Not total, like, I don't know.
Well, it really just seems very different, and you're gonna have to figure out how to kind of play, and it does sound like it puts you on a bit of a clock. Because what you mentioned really interesting was with the support road, where like you don't even have to play him. He doesn't have to be like a core where you're protecting him and giving him space and counting on him to pay off. You can play him in some other different role, and like he still is like a ticking time bomb. Like you can transition him as well. Just like you play him as something else early on and just transition him later on to help be part of your split push or death ball or whatever you want him to do. That like he's very amorphous in that sense. So it's not even like, you're putting your eggs all in his basket. The basket's gonna be there no matter what. It feels like.
Absolutely, and that ticking time bomb is the perfect way to say it. Is that, and I'm also roaming around a lot, and I'm also getting kills, and I'm around a lot of experience. And like Grouty brought up, you do need levels early. Levels early is a pretty big thing for Arc Warden, and especially playing this what Cyphus and I call gank squad, where we literally, or firefighters, where we are 2 supports and we're playing supports like how pros play supports, I guess, but we're much worse obviously. But we're not just like being static and like I'm a safe lane support, so I stay safe lane and my anti-mage gets farm and I take half of it. No, we make sure that anti-mage is fine and we've done the proper harass and safe lane, and then we go off lane for a little while and help the off lane. Oh no, mid's in trouble. TP mid, and that's what we're doing. I am constantly rotating with Arc Warden when doing it that way, and yeah, gold is just as plentiful, especially with it being around kills with the assist gold and grabbing kills every once in a while, because I'm able to flux somebody and they run off into the fog of war, and then 2 seconds later it's Arc Warden is now on a killing spree or something. It makes that Midas maybe even come a little faster than, in a good game it comes really fast, right? Where the AA, and I think AA Arc Warden, because we did some theorizing on like how do we make sure we're doing maximum damage and whatnot, and the chilling touch makes it so my right clicks matter, and my flux makes it so the cold feet matters, and the ice vortex makes it so my flux is doing a shitload of damage, shitload more damage, right? So it's a really cool combination. I enjoyed playing it. Anyway, any last thoughts on Arc Warden, Grouty?
One more tip for laning, I guess, if you're trying him in the mid lane, would be to kill off your opponent's range creep as quickly as possible to force them to come into creep range of their melee creeps, so you get to harass them freely. That's the only other real thing that I think I missed as far as tips go. But otherwise, yeah, I think we covered a lot of his pluses and minuses, and hopefully it will help people know how to play with and against him, if anything. Like, even if it doesn't inspire people to want to play Arc Warden, like I kind of felt when I tried him out the first time. I just hope that it makes him a better pick in Dota overall, just because he's not understood well right now. Similar to Oracle, how Oracle was when Oracle came out. And
Still is. I played Oracle today and was like, all right, so which of these does what? No. That's interesting, Oracle being added to Captain's Mode, but that's a thought for another time. Jack, anything? Any parting words? Anything? Any interesting tidbits that you've picked up on with your beautiful Dota mind?
No, it's no. I mean, this guy's who knows how long away from being put into the scene, but it's interesting, and now I have some idea of what he does. So I'll thanks to Grouty for putting that on the radar, and yeah, we'll not looking forward to playing against this guy.
Exactly. Well, we'll be right back, everybody. You can find Grouty at Grouty Dota. That's GROUTY Dota. Friendly fella, is responsive on Twitter. You have any Arc Warden questions or just questions in general? He's a good Dota player. He knows a lot about it, and he goes way back into the StarCraft roots, which is cool. We got to talk about some StarCraft before recording. Yeah, make sure to hit him up. Watch his stream. It's interesting. Watch his Arc Warden play, and yeah, we will be right back with you. See you later, Grouty.
Thanks for having me, guys.
All right, guys, so welcome back from your break, and thank you for joining us on this basically special Arc Warden episode. So next week, just a programming note, we plan to do an episode that's kind of like a year in review for the year that was in 2015, and heck, there's a lot of Dota, a lot of interesting developments, a lot of different directions for the game. So if Shrew has convalesced by next week, then hopefully he'll be able to join me for that usual show. If not, the other fine folks in the .p network have done a great job of filling in these last few weeks. Obviously, Roland here, the star himself, and of course with the patch review, good old Ursinity was awesome with that. So it's been great having, and Mr. Blue as well. So it's been
he
great.
was a champion. That should be addressed, okay? I'm going to do a clap for so you took first place, Jack. At like somewhere around 9 hours of talking about 6.86. Second place goes to Ursinity at somewhere around 5.5 hours. Third place would go to Woodshrew at around 3 hours. And fourth place going to Mr. Blue at somewhere around 2 hours. That was an epic amount of recording. Using epic not as slang, but as its literal definition. It was an epic in podcasting, and it was crazy. I played like maybe 5 games while you guys were recording, and this part 2, and was just had it blasting on speakers, listening to it with the game sound muted, just playing games, and it was just like, wow, like they're on like S, and there's a lot of S heroes, and it's 3.5 hours in, so like. That was really cool. The community definitely appreciated it. That much could be seen from our end. And thank you for putting in that much time to inform people. I know a lot of people messaged me and said this was awesome. I was at work. I was able to listen to this throughout the entire week. Or my flight just got delayed, and then they took a picture of a screenshot on their phone of the 5 hour and 4 minute part 2 of 6.86 patch evisceration. So I want to say thank you on air for the hard work that you put into that. I really feel like you made it digestible in as short amount of time as possible. Honestly, like that's how much time is necessary. We've all put in hundreds and hundreds, some of us thousands of hours into Dota. And for it, in a 9 hour listen while you're at work or while you're in the car or whatever, you can know a little bit more about a pretty massive patch. The biggest I've been around for. That's for sure. So thank you, Jack.
Thanks, man. I mean, there's always so much more to uncover about everything. So, at the same time, I always feel like, hey, there's a heck of a lot more that we could talk about or go into, and there's just, there's so many resources and information that, yeah, it just never ends, and that's part of the fun of Dota. We're always just figuring things out, and I think at some point, just like we did for kind of 6.85, we'll have some kind of a roundup or talk about how things have changed, and we're starting to get some games kind of in the new patch WCA, obviously, plus the Radiant Dire Cup that are serving as excellent like early samples of the new patch. So we're going to talk about that, and we'll have a little bit more 6.86 data next week to kind of break down and talk about what is proving to be a very diverse patch so far. You're seeing a lot of fun and different heroes being used, and even some one pattern that I just thought of kind of was like, hey, they buffed all the TI 3-star heroes. They buffed Lone Druid for Bulldog. They buffed Puck for Dendi and S4. They buffed like the Jungle and Chen for Puppy. And there's another one in there too that I forgot. But they're bringing some of these heroes back into the game. They probably have Pudge, obviously, for Dendi as well. So
yeah, I was going to say, like, Pudge is definitely the pub ruiner right now, or the best time of your life if you're playing him. The Aether Lens, Aghanims, every 4 seconds machine gun hook shot you from your fountain to fountain isn't that much fun to play against, but I'm sure is a ton of fun to play as. So, good. I mean,
it's not quite the fountain hook, but it's got its own flavor, so it's not quite like that old send back, but yeah, it's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, we'll get into that more next week, and if anybody, we always appreciate, I don't say this enough, but we always appreciate any feedback or comments or, criticism to help us get better and do a better pod, so looking forward to that if there's any of that stuff. And just some basic plugs here. So .p_show is the Twitter for the DOTP network of shows.
I prefer DOTP, but everybody said CDEC, and then we had to change it to .p. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
the CDEC thing, we were DOTP. Then everybody started calling them CDEC, and I was like, that's cool. Let's call ourselves .p.
You know what? I feel bad when I call them CDEC because it's like I'm supposed to know better because I'm like whatever, like the Chinese translator or something, that I should be more keen to their preferences, but I just can't help
it. Sounds so cool. CDEC, man.
Yeah, it does.
It sounds way cool. Anyway.
So yeah, you can follow Roland on Twitter. I believe it's at DO.P_Roland. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. It is. Or DOTP_Roland.
All right. And I'm on Twitter at KBBQ Dota. And then, as usual, we'll have our Theorycraft Thursdays with Proud and Ursinity. You can find our website at defenseofthepatience.com. That's defense with an S and patience with a C, because I don't think it's spelled with an S ever anyway, so I'm not sure why I brought that up. And then we're also available on iTunes, and you can click through our banner on to support us on Amazon to support us and our network of shows. So thank you for listening in to this episode of Wannabe Wednesdays, the last one of 2015, New Year. We'll recap some things. And what was that?
I said, oh yeah, this is New Year's Eve is when this episode is released.
That's right. So, I mean, yeah, it's almost over, and obviously wishing everyone happy holidays, and we'll see you soon. We'll see you next week.